Hi everyone, welcome to a video for design programming on deploying a sketch. By now you should be thinking about what you can do with these sketches that you've made and finding a way to get them outside of the P5 editor into something a bit more useful. So let's get into that. We are going to be looking at how to embed your sketches. That's probably the easiest way, and I'll go through that first. And also developing offline in your own local client IDE. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, and then last of all we'll be looking at deploying P5.js to a website that anyone can view. So first off, embedding. So embedding is probably the easiest way to get your P5 sketch onto a web page, and if you've already got something built using website building tools such as Wix or WordPress or something like that, it'll usually have an option to embed code. And so the P5 online editor will give you some HTML code that you can then paste into that embed section, and we'll be looking at that and how to get that working. Embedding a sketch is a pretty simple process, so I've got an example sketch that I want to embed here. Show this to you. So it is currently 600 by 400. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. 200% sounds good. So I go up to File and then to Share. And what I'm given is up the top this embed link. I can click it and it will copy to clipboard. Otherwise highlight and copy it if you'd like. And what this will do is give an HTML instruction to insert an iframe. Now I'm going to be demonstrating how to embed just on Canvas because that's a tool that's available to me. And it should be similar to whatever you might be embedding on. You might just have to Google how to embed on that particular platform. But it should be a pretty simple process. So for me, I've got this little embed button. I'm just going to do a zoom in again so you can see what I'm typing. 200%. So I'm going to paste that in and hit submit. Now it's been put in, but the size is wrong and I've got these scroll bars. So I'm just going to delete that and I'll do it once more. But this time I'm going to be giving it some styling instructions. So I'm going to specify the width is 600 pixels. The height is 400 pixels. And I'm going to also turn off the overflow by setting it to hidden. If you don't really understand this sort of CSS instructions now, you will eventually do a course on web design and then you'll be a lot clearer. So I've got that. Still doesn't seem to be the right height though. Just double check my height. Going back over the footage, I did notice the error. That equals sign after height should have been a colon. If that's not working, I can also turn off the scroll bars. So let me do that again. This time I'm going to copy paste it so I don't have to type this all again. Width 600 pixels. Height 400 pixels. Overflow hidden. And I'm also going to add another instruction, scrolling equals, and I'm going to say no to scrolling. I'll also turn off the frame border. So I'll type frame border equals, I'm just going to say 0. So I'm going to copy this so I don't have to type it again if there's any more issues. Hit submit. See what I get. Right, this time it has appropriately sized itself. I might have just had an issue with the instruction before. and those extra commands might come in handy for you. So now if I go down and save that, that should be applied to the page. It is there. I'll zoom out and have a look at that. At 100%, and that does seem appropriately sized. Now we move on to working offline. I do want to specify that by offline we just mean working on your local machine. You don't actually have to be disconnected from the internet. So I'm going to be using the IDE Visual Studio Code. It's a free and easy one that should be available to everybody. You can get it at this link in the description. But I do also want to say that you aren't limited to this IDE. There are many other local client IDEs out there, and so if you are more versed or want to try out something else, go for it. You can start working offline from a sketch that you've already created within the P5 editor, and that's quite simple because it does give you this option to download the project. So if you go up to download, you should be provided with a link, so I'll save that, and then I'll have that ready on my desktop. So here I've got the downloaded file from P5.js editor, and I'm going to make a folder to put that in, and I'm just going to call this my web project. And I will copy everything inside here into web project. It will download as a zip file, which you can use whatever zip opener you'd like. Now that I have this file with all of the contents within it, I can drop that into this just straight into the window. You can also go up to File and Open if you want to specify. You'll usually get a pop-up whether or not you trust the sources. I mean, you're the author in this case, so I hope you trust yourself. Now I should be able to see and edit all of the files within. And given that these are these p5.js files, p5sound.min, these are the things that allow you to run p5.js code on a website on its own, and they are packaged up in that download as well. Sketch.js, you should see everything that you wrote in the editor in here, and then you'll have a little bit of a styling sheet, CSS, and that will sort of give you the bare bones to begin working with. And this is your index file, which is the page itself on which your sketch will be displayed. And so the way this works is this script tag will actually call your sketch.js file sketch. It also links to those included source files, p5.js and p5sound. You might end up with some more if you've used some GUI or some interaction or something like that. Now, in order to test this out and run this, you will need an extension. The extension that I use is called LiveServer. I've already got it installed, but if you wanted to install it as well, you can just type LiveServer up in there. And then this is it, LiveServer by Ritwik Day, and then you'll have an option to install it. Once it's installed, you should be able to run the index file by right-clicking on it, and then open with LiveServer. And that will pop it up, and what you see is a web page without the editor, and our sketch is running as it would be. Now if I go back to my sketch and I make it take up window width and window height, and run it again, we'll actually open in a new window, and the old one will still be here, but it will be updated. And there you have it. The next thing we're going to be looking at is called source control. Source control is a really useful thing for programmers or people developing projects with code, because it allows you to save changes at certain points in time to your code. This has quite a few benefits. So because multiple people can be working on the same project at the same time, when they push their changes to the repository, those changes can be merged together with changes from another user, sort of allowing you to work collaboratively. It also allows you to track changes to your code, so you can easily see what has changed from point to point and what has been developed at what time. And because you do have these save states, you can revert it if something goes wrong, which is really powerful. And if you don't want to revert it, but you just actually want to fix it, maybe it's a small fix, you can go back and look at those changes and see what's changed and what mightn't be stopping your code from working. So we're going to be using a free service called GitHub. GitHub allows you to set up multiple repositories. It's free, and you can use it collaboratively. So I would recommend, particularly for assignment projects, that you do set up a private repository. And that is because you don't want to be accidentally sharing your assignment code for reasons of academic integrity. I'll show you how to do that when we get into that. We will also be using GitHub Desktop, which is a client that makes GitHub just a little bit more user-friendly, particularly if you're not too familiar with the command line. So download that and also get set up on it with a GitHub account. All of those links are in the description, and yeah, we'll get into that. While I'm here, I would also say that there are other options to GitHub, such as Bitbucket, and there are also other Git clients that you might prefer, such as SourceTree. If you do want to have a look at those and do a bit of investigation on your own, go for it. So I've made a fresh account. So your page, once you're logged into GitHub with your account, should look exactly the same as mine. I've got this button up here that says Create Repository. I'm just going to click that to make my first new repository. Now I'm here, I can set the name. I'm just going to give it a general name called My Assignment. You can call yours whatever you'd like, maybe more specific with the assignment number and such and so forth. Here you can put in a description about what your project is about. And also would recommend that you do set your repository to private, specifically for assignments. The reason why this is because you don't want to publish your code to the internet, because then other people might be able to use it and copy your code, and then you could get in trouble with academic integrity. But also the main point is that a lot of the automated programs that search for plagiarism, such as Turnitin, will look at the internet and see if it's copied from somewhere else. So you don't want to get in trouble for copying your own code. Obviously that's an easy thing to fix after the point, but you don't want to be flagged as plagiarizing, so it's best to keep it as private. You can also add a README. This is a pretty handy place to put things such as what your code is dependent upon. Maybe you've used some plugins or things that you need to remember. And then when you come back to your repository after a long time and want to get it up and running again on a new computer or something, you do kind of want to remember these things. So that's a good place to put that information. You can also add a git ignore file. I think you need a template, and there isn't a template for JavaScript, so I'm just going to leave that now and possibly create it manually later. A git ignore file allows you to specify folders or files that you don't want to put onto your repository, and that's really handy if your repository or if your project is creating files that aren't necessary for the running of the project, but maybe they are for debugging and some things like that. You can also choose a license. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to hit create repository. Alright, so here I am with my brand new repository. It's got nothing in it. Here you can see a bunch of the command lines to get to commit code to your repository. I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm just going to set this up in desktop, and here I've got this button for it. So I've already got GitHub Desktop installed and running, so when I click that, it should open up in desktop. And I'll hit open. So my GitHub desktop client has opened, and it has given me this dialog allowing me to clone that repository. I'm just going to leave the location in the default position, which is Documents folder under a folder called GitHub, and then it's making a folder for itself given the name. So if I hit clone, that copies everything from the repository online onto my computer. Currently that's empty at the moment because it is a brand new project. If I click Show in Explorer, I should be able to see that folder. So here it is, my assignment, and there's currently nothing in it. I do have the example that I was using before, so I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to put all of those files inside. Alright, that's there. Now if I go back into GitHub Desktop, I can see all of the files being added and the changes as well. So if we look at the sketch file, all of the information from the sketch is shown to me here. These are shown as changes. The little plus symbol isn't part of the file, but it lets me know that that line has been added to the code. So if I do my first commit, I'm just going to call this my initial push, and here I'm going to specify these are the initial files that I was working with before on the P5 online editor. You can obviously put in whatever description is most appropriate for you, but I suppose for me that one is. Now if I hit commit to main, all of those files are now put onto that branch, onto that repository. So I can also have a look at these commits. So this is my initial commit, my push, and all of those files are now there. So while these changes have been made to my local repository, they haven't actually been updated on the actual repository. So even if I refresh this, we should see that it's still empty. The way that I'm going to push all of these changes to the repository is by hitting this publish branch. It's currently pushing, and those changes have now been made. So now if I go into here, I should see those changes being reflected, and just like that, this commitment has been made. The next thing we're going to be looking at is called Github Pages. This is a free service offered by GitHub that allows you to publish your code not just in raw form, but actually as a website that's viewable and usable. It'll also give you a URL that you can then provide to anybody who you want to have a look at your website. The important thing to note here is that this won't work with private repositories, because once you publish something to the internet, it is public. So we're going to have a look at how to do that, how to change a private repository to public, and this is probably something you'd want to do after your assignment has been graded. Now when we look at the code on the repository, we can see that everything's here, but it all still is files and folders. So if we look at the index.html file, rather than being displayed as a web page, we see it here displayed as text. If we actually want to publish our code as a web page, we can go up to Settings and then into Pages, and it will tell us that we either need to upgrade or make this repository public to enable pages. So in order to do that, I'll go to Options. Then down the bottom here, there's this danger zone. Now you shouldn't be too afraid of this, but these are the kind of things that you might want to think twice about doing, such as deleting it or putting it into an archive away for safekeeping, or transferring ownership. Sort of things that would maybe restrict your access to the repository. And that's why they're here in the danger zone. Here we've got change visibility. So I'm going to make this public instead. And here it's going to ask me to confirm by typing this, just to make sure that I know that what I'm doing. So I've typed in my username and repository name, just like they've asked, and I'm going to click I understand, change it to public. Now it is public. I'll go back into Pages. I'll set the source to my main branch. that's the default main branch. You can make other branches if you are working on sort of different things and merge those back together. We won't get into that right now. And now I'll hit save. So this URL has been created, and this is how we can view our website on the internet and share it around. So you might have the same problem I did, where when I go to this URL, it's not automatically detecting that the index.html file is the main page that I want to view. So it should typically auto detect that. Sometimes you will have to maybe make a small change to the index file and commit it again, and it will detect it appropriately. Otherwise, you can just specify index.html in the URL, and you should be able to get there. So I'll just go there now. Index.html, and as you can see, I now have that code on the internet. Now that I've got my repository set up and my pages set up, I can make changes locally, push them, and see that reflected on the internet. So I've gone to my folder where I've got my cloned repository, and I'm going to drag that into Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code also has the ability to push to Git and sort of things like that, but I'm not going to worry about that at the moment as I'm still using Git for desktop. So within the style CSS, what I think I want to do with my canvas is actually get it to appear in the middle of the page. So if I just display that as it is, see that it's on all the way to the left and the top. So I'm going to give that a margin on the left, margin left, and I'll just set that to auto, and I'll give it margin right and set that to auto as well. I'll Control S to save that, and I should see those. Yep, and now it's in the middle. So now I'm going to push those changes. Oops, that's my slides. Now I'm going to push those changes to Git for desktop. So I should see the changes automatically update. It's detected that style.css has been changed, and my margins lines have been added to that. So I'm just going to call that, leave this as update CSS style.css. I'm going to say move canvas to middle of page. Commit that and push it. Now occasionally you might see that it'll take some time before the page is updated. Let's have a look. So I'll just go to my assignment. Yep, that's the one. That's not the one. Where's my pages link? There it is. So this time it hasn't got index.html. It has, so that commit has fixed that issue, but it hasn't aligned it. Let's see what the issue is. I'm going to open this up and see what is going on with this. Seems like the changes I've made to the canvas styling has not been pushed. Let's take a look at that in the page itself. Close that. As changes are in there, it might just take a little bit of time for that to be updated on the page itself. So I've come back to this a minute or two later, and as you can see, it is now centered in the middle. And that style.css change is now reflected on the web page itself. But yes, it can sometimes take time for the actual online website to update to reflect those changes, so it is a good idea to keep using the LiveServer to check your changes as you're working. So that's everything covered. Hopefully that was very informative for you, and now you have an idea of what you can do with your code after you've done with this course, and hopefully you can make some cool things and put them on the internet. Alright, thanks for watching.